The next presenter is Dr. Mitchell Cohen, who's well known to you as an electrophysiologist, professor of child health at the University of Arizona College of Medicine. Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks. So I think it's certainly an honor to be here to sort of present at the Hopkins meeting. I think there's some real ties that I've thought about. For starters, I've gotten to operate with, I'd be down in Nicaragua with Tom during mission work. I spent a decade with Marshall at CHOP, who's not only an amazing surgeon, but maybe the brightest cardiologist I've ever worked with. I've gone to missions with Jeff, and I've done the first ablation in Jamaica for a kid with WPW. And I think most importantly, I was trained by Vicky Vetter, who was trained by Helen Talsig, which by default makes me a grandson of Helen Talsig. So for those of you who don't know me, I am an incredible history buff. I was a history major in college, and so my wife will sort of know that I bore her to death with history. But as an electrophysiologist, I'm enamored by electricity, and whether it's electricity, whether it's electric fishes, whatever. But Luigi Giovanni, who was at the University of Bologna in 1790, was the first one to realize that you could basically take a dead frog's leg, put it with two different electrodes, and get the frog to twitch, or you could just take a dead frog's leg and put it on top of a beating human heart, and it would also twitch. Now, if you fast forward about 100 years, Gabriel Lippmann, who was in Germany at the time, who later won the Nobel Peace Prize, came up with this Lippmann capillary tube. And what this was a very small, tiny glass tube infused with sulfuric acid and mercury as a meniscus. And there was a little fine capillary portion of it that came out that was connected to a nerve. And as the nerve went by, the meniscus would change, and it would be printed out on a piece of photosensitized paper. And it sort of looked like an action potential, if you will. And you can sort of see the ground and the capillary tube connected to the nerve. Now, a few years later, Augustus Waller, who was a physician in the UK, decided this was kind of a neat concept. You've got this glass, you've got this tube filled with sulfuric acid with a mercury layer meniscus, and he basically took the capillary electrode and he connected it to his chest skin, much like the skin lead used for temporary epicardial pacing, and he put it to there, and he sort of got the first human recording of an electrocardiogram. He later actually put that glass tube down his throat and did the first esophageal recording. Now, the interesting thing about him was that when this got published, he concluded in the British Medical Journal, I do not imagine electrocardiography is likely to find any extensive use in the hospital. It can at most be of rare and occasional use to form a record of some rare anomaly of the cardiac action. So clearly he missed the boat. But the interesting thing was that he presented this at the first International Conference of Physiology in Basel, Switzerland in 1876. And there was a young physiologist who happened to be there named William Eindhoven, who stumbled upon this thing. He was a very junior physician at the University of Utrecht and convinced his boss to let him go to this physiology meeting. He was actually studying respiratory physiology at the time. And the funny thing about Eindhoven, so Eindhoven was a son of a British medical officer in Indonesia. Eindhoven's family actually was from not far from Barcelona, distant relatives, and during the Spanish Inquisition actually moved to the Netherlands and subsequently to the UK. And so Eindhoven came up with the idea of creating this small, fine capillary tube, this sort of little silver quartz tube that would be passed between two magnets, and through that current was this little silver quartz filament, and the magnet would rotate. And basically, everybody has seen this slide. But as the magnets would rotate, there would be this sort of string galvanometer, and it would produce a shadow, and that shadow would produce an EKG machine, basically with the sort of 3 feet, the 2 feet and 1 arm in a salt solution to produce the ground electrode that we're sort of all familiar with. And for those of you who don't know, I mean, this is where Eindhoven's triangle came up with, and the concept of P, Q, R, S, and T. Now, I don't know if anybody in the audience knows how it became known as P, Q, R, S, and T. And so it became P, Q, R, S, and T because Eindhoven was unsure if there was going to be something before the P or after the T. So we thought it would be safe just to put something in the middle of the alphabet so that if something was discovered later in time, there would be added initials to it. But he had it completely all figured out. He subsequently won the Nobel Peace Prize. His machine in 1924 weighed approximately 600 pounds, and it's certainly a far cry from where we are today. So thank you very much.